According to a new report out by Sportradar, there are 5 definable pillars powering the modern and next generation of sports viewing. What are they? Find out today with Mark Holland, SVP of Media Solutions at Sportradar, as we unpack what they found in their report for you as a fan, as a buyer, rights or platform specialist, or anyone just interested in learning more about sports advertising trends. Enjoy. Last time we caught up with Brian Josephs and we learned a lot about what Sportradar is doing on the tech side, but you've got a new sport media report out that's got some pretty interesting insights. I'd like to talk about that today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Tell us about what's in the report. I think that the number one standout thing to me is fans are fans wherever they consume. It's not just the game. It's not just one app. What's inside of this report?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, this report covers a lot of different avenues, but it really looks at, the sports media production and just that consumption experience and how it's becoming just far more flexible, interactive, and personalized. And it really caters to how that modern fan is evolving their behavior and how that content consumption is changing. The report covers, a lot of different areas of that, from like emotional storytelling, right? Like getting into the heroes, the rivalries, the milestones that you see in any given event, how experiences are starting to become more personalized and how that's, becoming more available right across all the various platforms. How data is a big part of this. Data is enabling that storytelling and enabling that interactivity for the fan. And ultimately how, companies like ours at Sportradar can help scale, these types of experiences, enable these companies to create these new experiences across all the different platforms.
It's interesting to think about data, right? It's, sometimes we talk about data or data. I think that's a debate we could have a separate conversation on, but we think of it and it sounds kind of sterile either way, right? It's this thing. What do I do with this thing? It's an amorphous blob until I make it into something, until I tell a story with it, until I bring the fan into this thing that goes beyond the game. Can you maybe give us some examples of how does that show up? What does that look like? Emotional storytelling. We get the action on the field or on the court, but what does that mean in practice? How are your partners using it?
Yeah, data is used in a lot of different ways. Everything from your base core experience to just a box score, right? Like what was the score of a given event that I'm looking for?
Oh,
But as
sure.
you're watching an event in a live broadcast on a stream or even within highlights, data really helps provide context and meaning for what's going on. It kind of helps capture and understand a moment in time, right? It's like, well, sure, that was just an individual hit, in an MLB game, but it just happened to be, maybe a career milestone, or that individual moved up in a leaderboard. The simple things like that help you connect to those moments and to that game. And we're just seeing a lot more of that across, all sports experiences today, be it digital or, on streaming and in linear broadcasts as well. We've got a couple products recently. One of them is called Foresight, that allows sort of real-time probabilities and performance metrics are appearing on the screen as you're watching it. And it really kind of gets you involved in interacting, within the actual broadcast itself. But again, it gives you that context and meaning of like, was that a really, challenging shot, that this player was about to make, or should they have passed, over to that direction? What would have happened in those particular outcomes? And you're just seeing a lot more of that today. And I think it's allowing fans to, have much more immersive experiences.
I want to talk about the Foresight product. My son had a project for a math class where they got to choose a game. They had to come up with a game that taught other students from different grade levels. My son's in 7th grade, but it went as low as 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. It had to create a game that taught each grade level about the math they were studying in class. And my son and his group, they came up with a game that the students had to answer a question, and based on their answer, they got a number of shots. And based on whether or not they got the answer right, the number of shots they got, it determined the angle that they had to shoot from and the basket that they had to shoot at. And ultimately, it ended up being a game of percentages and angles. And it was so fun to show him the podcast that we did with Brian, show him this is how Peacock and the NBA are using the same thing you're doing for your class project, percentages and angles, to show probability. They had a leaderboard, who made the most shots, the highest percentage made from the different
I
angles.
love that.
It was a really cool way to tie that back in. But that's a great example that I think, okay, that's how we're taking data. We're changing the fan experience really at that point, beyond just even a call out about a stat. This is changing the way that we consume the sport. Is that
Yeah, that's exactly right.
that
And
that the
that's
feel?
such a good
Okay.
example. I love hearing that.
Yeah, he got 100 on it too, by the way, which I was so
Good.
proud of as a dad. But that was fun to pump him up of like, hey, dude, this is a real business. This is a product. This is something that a company is doing. What else? What other ways are you seeing companies, leagues, networks, streamers? How else are you seeing the product and the data be used?
I think there's a number of different ways. So we actually have another product called GameFrame, similar to Foresight in a way that it allows you to tell stories, obviously, as it's going on. But this is an example of the take your normal shot chart where it's actually virtualizing the individual player and showing the exact movements based on player tracking data of how they took all those shots. So from a storyteller and a broadcaster's perspective, it's not just showing the X's and O's on the court and say, he's making them from the left side.
Oh, that's cool.
It's look at how he made them from the left side and why, like the movements that he's making. And it really gets you, to understand like, wow, that player really did excel in this particular, element of the game. And we're just seeing a lot more of that with the visualizations. But, you also see, data is used in just being able to cater to sort of the individual fan and sort of the personalized nature of their experience, right? Like, leveraging technology and AI allows us to interrogate and analyze data so much, faster and quicker, during a live environment and produce content and produce that context, leveraging the data. And that allows, to start to cater different experiences to different fans. And we're starting to see more of that across, the media landscape.
Interrogate the data. I've never heard that before. What do you mean?
It's one thing to say, that shot was made or that basket was made, but how is it made? What led up to that particular event? What happened after that event? Like really diving into and interrogating, all of the elements that's leading up to that moment or that event to, again, provide context and meaning of like, why was that important or why was that significant or how, maybe it was just a simple pick and roll, but it was different in this, particular way because of either the matchup or the player's movements or things leading up to the individual event.
And what are, I guess, and this is, again, probably another episode entirely to itself, but from idea to execution, and I want to bring it all back to the report, but how does something like that start? Does it start at the league level? Is it identified by a streaming app saying, hey, we want to create this other fan experience to stay competitive with the market? Like, what's driving the innovation, if you will?
I think the beauty of it is it's coming from everywhere. And that's what's making the industry move so quickly. It is coming from the leagues. They're collecting a lot more data and what they're doing with the player tracking and just the speed in which we're able to collect and capture data. Companies like ours are innovating and creating these new experiences and visualizations to help in our partners and our clients engage fans. And media companies are obviously in touch with the end user, and they're seeing different ways that they can start to expand their storytelling ways. So it's really coming from all the different directions, and we're lucky enough where we can kind of sit in the middle of that and work with the clients, work with the leagues, obviously working with the data and knowledge about the fans as well to start to bring some of these experiences to life.
I know that one of the big pieces in the report is scalability, which sounds a little bit like stability, and being able to make sure that all of these things kind of work across a pretty dynamic environment: broadcast, streaming, international, domestic, regional, all of these disparate. Talk to us about that. How does that come together?
Yeah, scalability is obviously key, for any individual, broadcaster or anyone who's trying to create an experience to be able to do it across, all these different platforms, right? It's not really this one size fits all where like, I'm only worried about my website right now, or I'm only worried about the linear broadcast. It's they're creating these ecosystems across all of these different platforms. And when you have an experience, you want it to scale across all of those. And, to your point, to be stable across all of those. So, the foundational data that we provide, we provide a very easy integration for companies to be able to produce these types of experiences across all the various platforms, and things like Foresight or GameFrame, in the same way to be able to enable it so that, our partners can use those across all the various mediums that they're attempting to create these experiences from, enabling that scale.
What are the maybe the choke points? Where do great ideas fall down or hit snags in the process that don't always materialize? Like, what's the hardest part of bringing some of this to life?
It's a good question. I'd say the hardest part, time and resources can be a
Ooh,
hard part for everyone.
isn't it always?
It is. And, you look at, the broadcasting industry today, and, obviously they're squeezed in a variety of different ways, and they're trying to find ways to innovate and keep fans engaged. And, resourcing can be always tough there, but it kind of goes back to that scale and leveraging, companies like ours to be able to do and create those experiences for them so that they can do more with less.
What are the things you're most excited about? There's a lot left on the sports calendar still this year. I'm sure Sportradar is involved with different pieces in different ways. What are you most excited about?
Oh, I mean, the World Cup is coming up here in June, so that's a big event.
Real soon.
So we're very excited about that, and we've got a lot of improvements within our soccer data and across the company and what we're providing around soccer or football, I should say. But we're also very excited, obviously, with the NBA playoffs going on right now, NHL playoffs, getting into the MLB season, and all that's going to cycle through, and we'll start seeing the fall sports coming at the end of the year as well. And every year brings new experiences and new opportunities to start expanding upon the game. So I think all that together is just really exciting.
It is. And we covered some research. There's a stat that I know is floating around about the World Cup, equivalent to 3 Super Bowl sized audiences a day for a month straight. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
How can you tease us at all how Sportradar is going to be involved with the World Cup? Are you able to talk about any of those relationships or partnerships, how we might see it show up?
I don't think I can talk a lot about the relationships or partnerships just yet, but I'd definitely be on the lookout for, just expanded data sets, expanded capabilities as far as following the matches and, things like foresight and things like that as you're looking across, the viewing experience.
Cool. That's the first rule of show business. I think keep them coming back for more, Mark. We'll have to do a follow-up. We've certainly seeded a few here. What we'll do is we'll link to the research. It's going to be right at the top of the show notes so that if you're listening to this, you can download it, grab it. It'll all be close by. Mark, thanks so much for making this happen.
Tim, thank you so much. It was a great time to be here.
Absolutely. And if you found this conversation to be helpful, please share it with a colleague or a client. Start a conversation yourself today. We'll see y'all next time.